I pretended to be a poor mother to test my son's laws. My name is Sophia. I'm a retired bank officer, living alone in a quiet old house at the end of a peaceful street. Every morning, I water my small garden, feed the stray cats, and make a cup of tea that reminds me of the days when my husband was still alive. Life has been simple. Maybe too simple. But behind this calm routine, I hide a story that no one knows, not even my son. Ahmed is my only child. After his father passed away, I worked day and night to raise him. I gave him everything: education, comfort, love. But I never told him the truth about how much wealth I had quietly built over the years. He always thought his mother was just an average, middle-class woman who depended on a small pension. That's how I wanted it. Because I wanted Ahmed to value effort, not money. Years passed, and one day, Ahmed came home with a smile that could light up the whole room. "Mom," he said, "I met someone. Her name is Anila." The way he said her name told me everything. He was in love. Anila came from a very wealthy family, business people, living in a huge house, always surrounded by luxury. When I first met her, she was polite, well-dressed, and spoke softly. But there was something in her eyes, a tiny flicker of pride, as if she already knew her world was above ours. I smiled through it, because Ahmed loved her, and for a mother, that's enough. Their wedding was grand. Anila's parents paid for almost everything: the venue, the decorations, even the photographer. I offered to help, but her mother gently refused, saying, "Greater than oh please, Mrs. Safia, you've done enough already by raising such a fine son." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes said something else. After the marriage, Ahmed moved into Anila's family home. At first, everything seemed perfect: dinners together, laughter, long drives. But slowly, Ahmed began to change. He stopped visiting me as often. When he called, it was short, and once, when I asked if I could come visit, he said, "Greater than Mom, it's not a good time right now." You know how Anila's parents are about privacy. My heart sank. I raised him to be kind, to respect family, but now it felt like I was being gently pushed aside. Months passed. One day, Ahmed finally called and said, "Greater than Mom, Anila's parents have invited you for dinner. They really want to meet you properly this time." I could hear the hesitation in his voice, and something inside me whispered, "This dinner isn't about love, it's about judgment." That night, I sat on my bed, staring at my wardrobe. Do I wear my best dress, my pearls, my old gold bangles? Then I smiled to myself. No, I'll go exactly as they think I am: a simple, poor, retired woman. I took out a plain cotton sari, old but clean. I left my jewelry in the drawer, and the next evening, I called a rickshaw instead of my car. When I arrived, their house was shining like a palace. Golden lights, marble floors, and servants standing by the door. Anila's mother opened the gate and looked me up and down. "Oh, you're Ahmed's mother. Please come in," she said politely, but her tone was cold. Inside, I saw Ahmed, nervous, trying to smile. He hugged me quickly, whispering, "Greater than Mom. Please don't mind if they talk too much. They just have their own way of things." I nodded, pretending not to notice his anxiety. Dinner was served in a dining room larger than my entire house. Crystal glasses, silver spoons, expensive perfumes in the air. Anila's father spoke the most. "Greater than Ahmed has a bright future. We'll make sure he doesn't have to struggle anymore. You know, people from humble backgrounds deserve a chance to grow." He said it with a smile that cut through me like a knife. I looked at him quietly. He didn't know that I owned 3 properties, 2 businesses, and a charity foundation that helped poor women across the city. He didn't know that the poor woman, sitting at his table, could buy his company twice. But I stayed silent. Anila's mother added, "Greater than if you ever need help, Mrs. Safia, please let us know. We treat Ahmed like our own son. We'll make sure you're comfortable too." I thanked her softly and smiled. After dinner, when I was about to leave, she said, "Greater than oh, you didn't bring your car." I looked at the rickshaw driver waiting outside and said, "Greater than no, I prefer simple rides. They remind me of life's real value." For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. As the rickshaw moved away, I looked back at the glowing mansion, and I whispered to myself, "Greater than they saw what they wanted to see. Now, let's see who they really are." That night, I made a promise. The next time I met them, the truth wouldn't be hidden anymore. Not to hurt them, but to show my son the difference between appearance and worth, between money and respect. Because sometimes, a person must act poor to reveal who's truly rich inside. The night after the dinner, I couldn't sleep. The lights from Anila's parents' mansion still flickered in my mind. Their fake smiles, their careful words, the way Ahmed's eyes kept shifting, as if he was afraid I might embarrass him. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, turning slowly above me. A single thought echoed in my mind: when people think you have nothing, they show you who they really are. So I decided to find out the truth. Over the next few days, I started watching silently, patiently. I called Ahmed once, just to talk. He didn't answer. I texted him, *beta, how are you? Hours passed. No reply. When he finally called back that night, his tone was rushed. "Greater than sorry, Mom. I was busy. You know, things are a bit tight right now." "Tight?" I asked gently. "Everything okay?" He sighed. "Greater than Anila's dad wants me to handle part of his business, but it's complicated. They don't think I'm ready yet." I could hear the disappointment in his voice. He was trying to fit into a world that didn't want him there. The next week, I decided to visit them, unannounced. I carried a small box of sweets. It's what mothers do. But when I rang the bell, the guard stopped me. "Madam, who are you here to see?" "I'm Ahmed's mother," I said kindly. He looked uncertain. He didn't move. Then I heard a faint voice behind the door. "Anila's mother. Tell her they're not home." The guard looked uncomfortable but did as told. "Greater than sorry. Madam, they've gone out." I nodded, smiled, and left. I didn't say a word, but inside, my heart cracked, not from rejection, but from the realization that my son was letting this happen. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a small wooden box. Inside were documents, property papers, bank accounts, donation receipts, all proof of who I really was. But I closed it again. No, they didn't deserve to know yet. Not until I saw the full picture. 2 days later, I received a phone call from one of my old friends. Mrs. Nadia. She runs a women's charity, Greater Than Safia. "We're hosting a dinner this weekend, a fundraiser. Would you come?" I smiled. That event would change everything. Because what they didn't know was, my charity foundation was one of the sponsors. My name was written right there. On the main banner, ****, sponsored by Safia Welfare Trust. ***. I decided to use this chance wisely. That evening, Ahmed came over for a short visit, his first in months. He looked tired. Distracted. I poured him tea and asked, "How's life, Beta?" He shrugged. "Greater than fine. Anila's parents are just a little particular about things. They expect perfection." "Do they treat you well?" He hesitated. "Greater than they do. But sometimes I feel like I'm still proving myself." I nodded slowly. Then I said, "There's a charity dinner this weekend. Come with me." He smiled faintly. "Greater than Mom. You know those events aren't really my thing." "And Anila, bring her too," I interrupted softly. "It'll be good for both of you." He finally agreed. The night of the event arrived. The venue glowed with soft golden light, filled with guests, businessmen, donors, and familiar faces from the city's elite. Ahmed and Anila entered, hand in hand. Anila was dressed beautifully, her head held high, but when she saw me talking to the event host, she looked surprised. "Mom, you know the organizers?" Ahmed asked. I smiled mysteriously. "Greater than a little bit." As the event began, the announcer walked to the stage and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's charity fundraiser has been made possible by the generous support of our main sponsor, Mrs. Sophia, founder of Sophia Welfare Trust. The audience clapped. Ahmed froze. Anila's eyes widened. I could feel their shock. They looked at me as if they were seeing me for the first time. When I walked onto the stage, I saw Anila's parents sitting in the crowd, their faces pale. Her mother whispered something to her husband, both visibly embarrassed. I took the microphone and smiled. "Good evening, everyone. Life has taught me something valuable. That wealth doesn't come from what's in your bank account. Greater than it comes from what's in your heart. Because respect, once lost, can't be bought back with money." The audience clapped again, but my eyes were fixed on Anila's family. After the event, Ahmed came to me. "Greater than Mom. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I touched his face gently. "Greater than because, my son, I wanted you to see how people treat you when they think you have nothing. Greater than that's when their true colors appear." Anila stood silently beside him, her eyes filled with shame. Her father approached me slowly. "Mrs. Safia, I must apologize." I didn't realize I raised my hand and stopped him. "Greater than you don't need to. You treated me based on what you saw, not who I was. And that's your loss." He lowered his head, speechless. Later that night, as I returned home, Ahmed walked beside me quietly. I could tell he was lost in thought. Finally, he said, "Greater than Mom, I'm sorry for how I acted. I should have stood by you." I smiled. "Greater than you made a mistake, Ahmed, but realizing it makes you stronger. Just remember, love isn't measured by luxury, it's measured by respect." He nodded, tears in his eyes. When I reached home, I looked up at the stars and whispered to myself, "Greater than the test isn't over yet." But now, they know who I am. Because in life, sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. And the quiet strength of a mother can shake even the proudest hearts. The next few days after the charity event were strangely quiet. Ahmed didn't call much, but I knew something had changed. When people's illusions break, silence often follows a silence full of guilt, shame, and realization. One evening, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I saw Anila standing there alone. She looked nothing like the confident woman I had seen before. Her eyes were swollen, as if she had been crying. She held a bouquet of white lilies, her hands trembling. "Greater than Auntie," she said softly. "Can I come in?" I smiled faintly and nodded. Of course, Beta. You're always welcome. She stepped inside slowly, looking around my home as if seeing it for the first time. The photos, the books, the quiet simplicity of it all. We sat down. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she whispered, "Greater than I didn't know. I mean, Ahmed never told me you were so successful." I smiled. "That's because I never told him." She frowned. "But why, Auntie?" "If I had known, maybe," I interrupted gently, "greater than maybe you would have behaved differently." She looked down, ashamed. "I judged you." "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "My parents. They always told me to marry within our class. And I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was wrong." I placed my hand on hers. "Greater than we all make mistakes, Anila. But the real test isn't in pretending to be perfect, it's in learning to be better." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Auntie, things aren't good between me and Ahmed. He's been distant since that night. I think he feels like he failed both of us." My heart ached for her and for my son. Love was meant to connect people, not break them. "Tell me something, Beta," I asked softly. "Do you love Ahmed, or do you love what he could become?" She looked at me, speechless for a moment. Then she whispered, "Greater than I love him, but I don't know if I deserve him anymore." I smiled sadly. "Greater than then prove it. Not by words, but by standing with him, even when your world tells you not to." She nodded, slowly. That day, I saw a glimpse of sincerity in her eyes for the first time. After she left, I sat alone, thinking, maybe my test had worked, not to expose, but to awaken hearts. But the peace didn't last long. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Ahmed. His voice was trembling. "Greater than Mom. I need to talk to you. It's about Anila's father." My chest tightened. "What happened, greater than he?" "He lost a big business deal. There are rumors about unpaid loans. He's been under a lot of stress." I remained silent. Ahmed continued, "Greater than, and now he wants me to take responsibility for one of his accounts." "Mom, I don't understand it, but something feels wrong." My instincts screamed danger. Money can blind even the closest families, and this time, it seemed greed was about to swallow their pride. I asked calmly, "Did you sign anything?" "Not yet," he said. "But he's pressuring me too. He says it's just a formality, a family favor. Don't sign anything." "Ahmed," I said firmly. "Greater than if someone's rushing you to sign. It's never a good sign." He hesitated. "Greater than Mom, I don't want to offend him. He's already angry about what happened at the event. He thinks you embarrassed them." I sighed deeply. "Greater than truth never embarrasses those who are honest, Ahmed. Only lies feel insulted by truth." There was silence on the other end, then Ahmed whispered, "Greater than you're right. I'll talk to Anila." But what I didn't know was Anila's father had already made his next move. The next day, a man in a suit arrived at my doorstep. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a legal notice, a claim against my son, accusing him of mishandling company funds. I felt the world spin for a moment. My son, being dragged into their mess. The very people who looked down on us were now using him as their scapegoat. I went straight to Ahmed's house. When I arrived, chaos had already begun. Anila was crying in the living room. Her father was shouting at someone on the phone. Ahmed stood there, pale and silent. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Greater than Mom. I swear, I didn't do anything wrong." I looked straight at Anila's father. Greater than I know you didn't, I said calmly. But I also know who did. He turned toward me, angry. Greater than Mrs. Sophia, stay out of this. This is a business matter. I stepped closer, my voice steady. Greater than no, Mr. This is a matter of integrity, something your business has long forgotten. Everyone froze. I continued, greater than you wanted to use my son as a cover-up for your fraud. But I have the documents you signed, every fake transaction, every account transfer. I could have exposed you months ago. He looked shocked. Greater than how? How do you have those papers? I smiled coldly. Greater than, because I'm not as poor as you thought. I own 15% of your company shares, quietly, through my foundation. You didn't even bother to check. Anila gasped. Her mother sat down, speechless. I took out the envelope I'd brought with me. This is your real notice. Mr. Rahman, a formal audit request to the authorities. Either you confess, or your empire collapses. He was silent. For the first time, his arrogance broke. He looked small, fragile, afraid. Ahmed stood beside me, his hand trembling. Greater than Mom. What have you done? I turned to him and said softly, greater than what I had to do to protect my son and to protect the truth. Anila walked to me slowly and hugged me tightly. Greater than Auntie, I promise. I'll stand with Ahmed. No matter what happens. Tears filled my eyes. Then both of you have already won. That night, when I returned home, I sat on my balcony under the quiet sky. I thought about everything: love, pride, lies, and the masks people wear to hide their fears. Maybe this was life's way of reminding me that every truth comes at a cost, but it's a price worth paying, because when masks fall, only real faces remain. I whispered to myself, greater than the test is over. But the lessons, they've just begun. And somewhere, deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something greater, because strength isn't in wealth or status, it's in standing tall when the world tries to make you bow, and that was my silent victory. After that confrontation, everything changed. The truth had shattered the illusions. And the house that once echoed with pride now stood silent, heavy with guilt. Ahmed and Anila moved out of her parents' mansion. They came to stay with me for a while, not because they needed a place, but because they needed peace. For the first few days, the air between us was quiet. Uncertain. Ahmed avoided eye contact. Anila spoke softly, always helping around the house, as if trying to repay a debt that couldn't be repaid. One morning, I found Ahmed sitting alone in the garden. He looked tired, not from work, but from emotion. Greater than Mom, he said slowly. I don't understand why all this happened. I never asked for money, for power. I just wanted to build a good life. I sat beside him. Greater than sometimes. Beta. Life doesn't test your weakness, it tests your strength. Greater than, and when you stay honest in those tests, you win, even if the world doesn't see it. He nodded, but his eyes were far away, lost in thought. Anila came out with tea. She smiled faintly, trying to hide her worry. Greater than Auntie, I've been thinking. Maybe we can start something of our own. Greater than a small business. Something independent. I looked at her with pride. That was the first time she had spoken about building something, not inheriting it. That's a good idea, I said softly. Greater than when you create something with your own hands. It carries your soul. Weeks turned into months. Ahmed and Anila began working on their project. a small cafe that promoted local women's handmade crafts. They called it *Roots*. I watched them grow, not as husband and wife from two worlds, but as a team, grounded in love, humility, and purpose. But life never stays peaceful for long. One afternoon, I received a letter. It was from a lawyer in Karachi. The name on it made my heart skip a beat. Rashid Ahmed, my late husband's business partner. I had heard that name in 25 years. Inside the letter was a single line, greater than Mrs. Sophia. There's something you should know about your husband's last deal. It's about your family, and a secret that may still be affecting you today. My hands trembled. I sat down, reading it again and again. Could it be true? After all these years. I didn't tell Ahmed or Anila yet. Instead, I decided to visit Karachi myself. Something inside me said this was important, maybe even dangerous. When I arrived in Karachi, I met Rashid at an old seaside cafe. He was older now, with silver hair and kind eyes. "Safia," he said softly, "you haven't changed much." I smiled faintly. "Time changes everything, Rashid, except questions." He nodded, sighing. "Greater than I owe you the truth. 25 years ago, when your husband died, greater than the official report said it was an accident. But it wasn't." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" He lowered his voice. "Greater than your husband had discovered corruption in one of our investors' projects, greater than money laundering through false charity donations. He wanted to expose it. But before he could, his car was sabotaged." I froze. All these years, I had believed it was fate. But now, it felt like betrayal. Tears blurred my vision. "Greater than who?" I whispered. "Who was behind it?" Rashid hesitated. "The man's name was Rahman." My breath caught. "Greater than Rahman?" "Yes. The same Rahman whose daughter your son married." For a moment, everything around me faded. The sea, the cafe, the sound of the waves. Only that one name echoed in my mind. Again and again. Mr. Rahman, the same man who insulted me, used my son, and tried to destroy him, was also the man responsible for my husband's death. I felt anger, sorrow, disbelief, all at once. But more than that, I felt clarity. This was no coincidence. This was destiny unfolding in its quiet, cruel way. When I returned home, Ahmed and Anila ran to greet me. They had no idea what storm I carried inside. Ahmed said excitedly, "Mom, we finally got the license for the cafe. It's happening." I smiled weakly, trying to hide my turmoil. "That's wonderful, Beta." But inside, my heart was breaking. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at my husband's old photo. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered. "Greater than you knew this truth would find its way back someday." I wanted to scream, to tell Ahmed everything, but I couldn't, not yet. Because if he knew that his wife's father was responsible for his own father's death, his world would collapse. And I couldn't let that happen, so I kept the secret buried inside me, like a burning coal that I had to hold with bare hands. Days passed, but my silence began to show. Ahmed noticed my distant eyes. Anila sensed my sadness. One evening, Ahmed asked, "Greater than Mom, are you okay? You've been quiet lately." I forced a smile. "Greater than just tired, Beta. Nothing to worry about." He nodded, but his eyes didn't believe me. Later that night, Anila came to me privately. "Auntie, please tell me if something's wrong. Greater than you've done so much for us. I can feel you're hiding something." I looked at her, torn between truth and fear. Greater than some truths, destroy everything they touch. She frowned softly. Greater than then let me help you carry it. Her words hit me deeply. There was genuine pain in her eyes, not guilt. Not fear, just care. And at that moment, I realized she wasn't her parents. She was better. But fate had already written another twist. The next day, as I was returning from the market, I saw a familiar black car parked outside our gate. Mr. Rahman was standing there. He looked older, weaker, and desperate. Greater than Mrs. Safia, he said, his voice shaking, I need to talk to you. I stared at him. Silent. Every memory of my husband's death, every insult, every lie came rushing back. Greater than you've said enough in this life, I replied coldly. He sighed. Please. I've lost everything, my business, my respect, my friends. I came to say, I'm sorry. I folded my arms. Greater than sorry doesn't bring back the dead, Mr. Rahman. He looked at me, eyes full of regret. Greater than I didn't know it would go that far. I was greedy, yes, but I never meant to kill him. I only wanted to stop the report. The men who handled it, they went too far. Tears filled my eyes, but I stayed strong. Greater than, and now you want forgiveness. He nodded weakly. Greater than yes, not for me, but for Anila. She doesn't deserve to carry my sins. At that, my anger broke, because he was right. Anila didn't deserve it. I looked at him, and said quietly, forgiveness isn't something you ask for with words, Mr. Rahman. Greater than it's something you earn with your actions. Greater than go. Make peace with God before time takes it from you. He bowed his head and left. And as he drove away, I felt the years of buried pain finally begin to loosen their grip. That night, I sat with Ahmed and Anila in the garden. The air was soft. The stars, calm. They were talking about their cafe, laughing together like children. I watched them and thought, greater than. Maybe the past finally made peace with the future. I didn't tell them the secret, not yet. Some truths can wait until hearts are strong enough to bear them. For now, I chose silence. Not out of fear, but out of love. Because sometimes, a mother's greatest strength is the pain she never lets her children see. Weeks passed after Mr. Raymond's visit. I thought maybe the storm was over. But life never forgets what you try to hide. One morning, Ahmed came home earlier than usual. He looked pale, confused, holding an envelope in his hand. Greater than Mom, he said quietly. This was delivered to our cafe. It's addressed to you. But the sender's name says Rashid Ahmed. My heart stopped. Rashid had promised not to contact me again after that day. Why now? I took the envelope with trembling hands. Ahmed watched silently as I opened it. Inside was a file. And a letter. The letter said, only this. Greater than Safia. I couldn't keep it hidden anymore. The documents you'll find here. Your son deserves to know the truth. Before I go, please forgive me for keeping this from you for so long. I flipped through the papers. Police reports, witness statements, all proving one thing, that my husband's death wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. And the person who funded that operation was Mr. Rahman. My world spun. My breath felt heavy. And before I could hide it, Ahmed snatched the file. Greater than Mom, what is this? I froze. Greater than Ahmed, please. Not now. He flipped through the papers, faster, his eyes darkening. Greater than no. I need to know. Who is Rahman? Why is his name here? Tears filled my eyes. I couldn't lie anymore. Greater than because, Beta, your father's death wasn't an accident. And the man behind it was your wife's father. The silence that followed felt like a scream. Ahmed's face went blank. He stepped back slowly, shaking his head. Greater than no. No, Mom, that's not true. There must be some mistake. I tried to reach him. Greater than Ahmed. Listen, greater than no. He shouted, his voice breaking. Greater than you're saying. Anila's father killed my father. After everything, after all these years, you're telling me now. I could feel his pain tearing through him. But what could I say? I didn't tell you, because I wanted to protect you, I whispered. Greater than you had already suffered enough. He laughed bitterly. Greater than protect me. You hid the truth from me, Mom. You made me live with the daughter of the man who destroyed our family. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Greater than no, Ahmed. I made you see that love can heal what hate destroys. He turned away. Furious. Greater than I need air, he said, grabbing his keys. I can't believe this. And he drove off. That night felt endless. I sat on the porch, staring into the dark, listening for the sound of his car. But he didn't come back. Anila came home from the cafe late. Confused. Greater than Auntie. Where's Ahmed? I've been calling him all evening. I looked up slowly. My eyes said everything my words couldn't. Greater than he found out, I whispered. He knows about your father. Her face drained of color. Greater than no, she gasped. Greater than how, Sue told him. I handed her the letter. She read it in silence, tears streaming down her cheeks. Auntie, I swear, I didn't know anything. My father never told me. If I had known. I held her hand gently. I know, Beta. You're not your father. But Ahmed's heart. It's broken. He'll need time. She nodded, crying softly. Greater than then, I'll wait. No matter how long it takes. 2 days later. Ahmed returned. His eyes were red, tired, distant. He walked straight into the living room, where I sat. Greater than Mom, he said in a hollow voice. Greater than I met Mr. Ramon. I froze. Greater than what? He came to the cafe yesterday. He told me everything. About Dad. About the deal. About his guilt. His hands trembled as he spoke. He cried, Mom. That man cried. Greater than said he hasn't slept peacefully for 25 years. I looked at him, my heart torn. Greater than, and what did you do? Ahmed's voice cracked. Greater than I walked away. Because I didn't know if I should forgive him. Or hate him. I stood and placed my hand on his shoulder. Greater than both are heavy burdens, Beta. But forgiveness sets you free. He looked at me, tears finally falling. Greater than how did you live with this, Mom? Knowing all this time. By remembering what your father believed in, that truth will always find its way. Greater than but revenge only burns the hand that holds it. Ahmed nodded weakly. For the first time in days. He hugged me, and in that embrace, I felt his anger slowly dissolve into sorrow. Later that evening, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw Anila standing there, her eyes swollen, hands trembling. Greater than Ahmed, she whispered. I know you hate me right now, but please, don't let my father's sins destroy what we built together. Ahmed looked at her quietly. No words, no anger, just emptiness. Anila, he said softly. You don't deserve this pain. But every time I see you, I see his face. I need time. I need distance. Anila broke down. Take all the time you need. Greater than just don't close your heart forever. and she left. Days turned into weeks again. The cafe remained closed. The laughter that once filled our home was gone. I watched Ahmed sink into silence, eating less, sleeping less, talking less, until one night I heard him in the garden, talking to the stars. "Dad, if you can hear me, I don't know what to do. I love her, but I hate what her father did. How do I separate her from his sins?" I stood behind him quietly, tears falling, because there was no easy answer. A month later, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived again, but this time from the hospital. It said, "Greater than Mr. Rahman. Admitted with critical heart failure. Greater than requested to see Mrs. Safia and Mr. Ahmed." I hesitated. Ahmed didn't. "Greater than let's go," he said. When we reached the hospital, Mr. Rahman was lying weakly on the bed, tubes everywhere. His eyes flickered open when he saw us. "Safia, thank you for coming." His voice was barely a whisper. "Greater than I've made my peace with God," he said slowly. "But I couldn't leave without asking for yours." Ahmed stood still, emotionless. "You destroyed my father's life, my mother's peace, and now you ask for forgiveness." Rahman nodded weakly. "Greater than I've carried this guilt for decades. Son, I've lost everything, money, power, pride. Please, don't let hatred eat you the way it ate me." Ahmed's jaw tightened. His fists clenched, then he let go. He reached forward and held Rahman's hand. "Greater than I forgive you," he said quietly. "Greater than, not because you deserve it, but because I can't carry this pain anymore." Tears rolled down Rahman's cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered. "Greater than, tell Anila I'm proud of her." Minutes later, his heart monitor went silent, and just like that, the man who destroyed our world finally found his peace. That night, we returned home. Ahmed sat silently beside me. "Greater than, Mom," he said, his voice trembling. "Greater than I forgave him. But I don't know how to forgive myself." I looked at him gently. "Then don't try to. Just live. Greater than, because living with kindness is the greatest apology to life." He nodded, eyes wet but peaceful. The storm had finally ended, but deep down, I knew every ending carries a beginning, and for Ahmed and Ani, their story was far from over. After Mr. Roman's death, the house felt heavier than ever. Even the air carried grief. For Ahmed, it was the end of hatred. For Oni, it was the beginning of punishment. She stopped coming home. She rented a small apartment near the old cafe, the same cafe that once echoed with laughter and dreams every morning. She sat by the window, watching the sunrise, holding a cup of cold tea she never drank. Inside her heart, she replayed everything: her father's crimes, Ahmed's silence, and Safia's kindness. It all burned quietly. One afternoon, Safia decided to visit her. When I reached her apartment, I found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers, old photos, receipts, business files, and her father's last note. She looked up, her eyes hollow but calm. "Greater than, Auntie," she said softly. "I was just trying to understand who my father really was." I knelt beside her. "Greater than, he was a man who lost his way. But that doesn't mean you have to lose yours." She smiled faintly. "Greater than, sometimes Auntie, blood feels like a curse. Greater than, wherever I go, people see his shadow in me." I held her hands gently. "Then let your actions speak louder than your past." Tears filled her eyes. "I want to rebuild the cafe. For him, for Ahmed, for all of us. Not as a business, but as a place of forgiveness. I smiled. Greater than then do it, Beta. That's how you'll keep your father's last wish alive. Not the one written on paper, but the one he carried in regret. Days turned into weeks. Anila threw herself into work again. She repainted the cafe walls, repaired the furniture, and named it the Second Chance Caf. Every detail was filled with meaning. The menu had quotes about kindness. The walls had photos of local women artisans. And the logo had a small heart, hidden in the word roots, a tribute to where it all began. When Ahmed saw the reopening announcement online, he didn't react. But late that night, he sat in his car outside the cafe, watching Anila work through the glass window. She didn't see him. He didn't get out. But that silence said more than 1,000 words. One evening, as Anila was closing up, a group of young girls entered. They looked nervous, holding handmade crafts. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we heard you help women sell their work here, but we can't pay for the booth." Anila smiled warmly. "Greater than you don't need to pay. You just need to believe in yourself." The girls smiled, tears in their eyes, and that moment, Anila realized she was finally living for something pure. But destiny wasn't done with her. One night, as she was locking up, she saw a man standing near the corner, dark jacket, cigarette in hand. When she looked closer, her breath caught. It was Rashid Ahmed, her father's old associate, the same man who had written to Safia. "Greater than you," she whispered. "Why are you here?" He smiled faintly. "Greater than I came to see if forgiveness really works." She frowned. "Greater than, what do you mean?" "Your father wasn't the only one who took part in that deal, Anila. Greater than there were others. I was one of them. And someone still wants that story buried." Her heart raced. "Greater than, why tell me this now?" "Because," he said quietly, "they're watching you. And if they find out what documents your father left behind, they won't just come for you, they'll come for everyone connected." Anila froze. Her world tilted again. "Greater than who?" she whispered. "Greater than a man named Zahid Malik, the investor your father tried to expose years ago. He's still in power. Still dangerous." Before she could say anything, Rashid walked away, disappearing into the dark. That night, Anila couldn't sleep. Every shadow felt alive. She checked the files again. And there it was, a sealed envelope her father had left with her name on it. She opened it slowly. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "Greater than Anila. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Greater than what's inside this drive is the truth I never had the courage to tell. Greater than, be careful. Greater than, the men I worked for will stop at nothing to keep it hidden." Her hands shook. She wanted to throw it away, but something inside stopped her. The truth had destroyed once. But maybe this time it could heal. The next morning, she called Ahmed. He didn't answer at first. Then, after several attempts, he finally picked up. His voice was cold but steady. "What is it, Anil?" "I found something. It's about your father. And mine. Please, just come once. After that, you'll never have to see me again." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I'll come." When Ahmed arrived, Anila showed him the note and the drive. "Greater than, I didn't know about this until last night," she said. "But if it holds what I think it does, we can finally end this story the right way." Ahmed hesitated, staring at the drive. "You sure you want to open it? The past has taken enough from us." "Yes," she said firmly. "Because silence is what ruined everything before." He nodded and plugged it into the laptop. A video started playing, grainy. Old footage of a business meeting. And there, in the corner of the screen, was Mr. Rahman. Beside him, Zahid, Malik. The video showed Malik threatening Rahman, telling him to destroy the evidence or face consequences. Then, another voice in the background, Rashid's, agreeing to handle it quietly. The truth was bigger than they had imagined. It wasn't just about family. It was about corruption, power, and silenced justice. Ahmed stared at the screen, stunned. He wasn't lying. My father really tried to stop all this. Anila wiped her tears. And now, it's our turn to finish what they started. But before they could back up the file, the screen went black. The laptop froze. Then came a message. You should have stayed quiet. Anila gasped. Ahmed quickly unplugged the system, realizing someone was tracking them. Greater than they found us, he said. We need to leave now. They ran out of the cafe, hearts pounding. As a black SUV turned the corner and stopped near the entrance, 2 men stepped out. Scanning the street, Ahmed pulled Anila behind the alley. Greater than we're not safe here. What do we do? She whispered. Greater than we go to Mom. She'll know what to do. They drove through the night. While in the shadows behind them, the black SUV followed quiet, relentless. When they reached Safia's house, I was waiting by the window. The look on their faces told me something was terribly wrong. Greater than what happened? I asked. Ahmed handed me the drive. This might be the reason Dad died. I looked at Anila, her face pale, but her eyes fierce with determination. I won't run this time, she said. I'll face whatever comes. My father spent his life hiding. Greater than I won't. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Then you're stronger than all of us, Beta. That night, as they slept in the living room, I sat by the window, praying. The moonlight fell across their faces, the children of 2 enemies, sleeping side by side, united by pain, and maybe by destiny. But far away, in a dark office lit only by a monitor, Zahid. Malik watched the live footage from the cafe's CCTV feed. He leaned back, smirking. Greater than so. The past still wants to breathe, he whispered. Greater than let's see how long it survives. That night, the air felt heavier than usual. The city outside slept. But inside our small house, none of us could close our eyes. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind felt like danger. Ahmed sat near the door, alert, a tired look in his eyes. Anila tried to stay calm, but her trembling hands betrayed her fear. I knew whatever storm was coming. It wasn't just about the past anymore, it was about survival. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at the door. 3 slow taps. Then silence. Ahmed froze. He looked at me. Then, at Anila. Greater than stay back, he whispered. He walked quietly to the door. Peeking through the small hole, there was no one, just the empty street, drenched in pale yellow light. He waited. And then another knock, louder this time. Greater than who's there? He shouted. No answer. Just the faint sound of footsteps fading away. When he opened the door, there was only a single envelope lying on the ground. He picked it up slowly, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. Inside, a small photo. It was a picture of our house, taken from across the street, from just a few hours ago. Written under it, in red ink, were 2 words. Greater than. Stay silent. Anila gasped. I felt the blood drain from my face. They know where we are, Ahmed said, voice tight with panic. I took the photo and looked closer. The handwriting. It was the same as the note Anila had found in her father's file. Zahid, Malik's men. The next morning, we decided to move. Ahmed suggested going to Lahore to stay with an old friend. But before we could pack, a black car stopped at the corner again. This time, they didn't hide. Two men stepped out, tall, dressed in black suits, their faces blank, their movements calm but deliberate. Ahmed shut the curtains immediately. "Greater than we can't go out," he said. "They're watching." Anila held my hand tightly. "Greater than, Auntie? I can't let you or Ahmed get hurt because of me." "No," I said firmly. "Greater than you are my daughter now. We face this together." Hours passed. The car stayed. Then, around sunset, it finally drove away. Ahmed exhaled, shoulders dropping with relief. Maybe they just wanted to scare us. But I had lived long enough to know, people like Zahid Malik don't scare. They warn, and warnings always come before storms. That night, as the rain began to fall, we heard the sound again. A car, fast, stopping right in front of the gate. Ahmed grabbed a metal rod. "Stay inside," he ordered, but before he could reach the door, someone started banging loud, desperate knocks, echoing through the hall. "Greater than, open up. Please, it's Rashid." We froze. Ahmed opened the door slightly, and there he was, Rashid, Ahmed, soaked, breathless, terrified. "Greater than, they're coming," he gasped. "Zahid's men. They know about the video." "How?" Ahmed demanded. "Someone leaked it. They think you have more copies. You need to leave. Now." Thunder cracked outside as Rashid's voice trembled. "Greater than, they're not just after the drive. They want to erase everything, every witness, every trace." Anila's face went pale. "Greater than, but where will we go?" "To my farmhouse outside the city," Rashid said quickly. "Greater than, it's isolated. You'll be safe there for now." I hesitated. Something in his eyes seemed genuine, but fear makes even truth look like a trap. Still, we had no choice. We left immediately. The rain was pouring hard, and the road ahead looked endless. Rashid drove while Ahmed sat beside him, scanning the mirrors constantly. Anila and I sat in the back, silent, listening to the storm hammering against the car roof. After an hour of driving through narrow, dark roads, we finally reached a small farmhouse surrounded by trees. No lights, no neighbors, only darkness and the smell of wet earth. Rashid parked the car and turned to us. "You'll be safe here. I've kept security cameras off the grid." We went inside. Dusty furniture, old curtains, but at least it was shelter. For a few minutes, the silence felt like peace, until the power went out. The sudden darkness made my heart jump. Only the sound of rain remained. Ahmed lit a candle. "Probably a fuse," he muttered. But his voice didn't sound convinced. Rashid went to check the power box outside. Minutes passed. He didn't return. "I'll go look," Ahmed said, grabbing a flashlight. He stepped out. We waited another minute. 2. Then, a scream. It was Ahmed. Anila rushed to the door. "Greater than, Ahmed." He came running back inside, his shirt wet, face pale. "Greater than, he's gone," Ahmed said, breathless. "Rashid's gone." "The car too." Anila's eyes widened. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "I mean, he's disappeared. He drove off." For a moment, none of us spoke. Then I understood. It wasn't an escape. It was a setup. Before we could react, the headlights of another car flashed through the window. Then came the sound of doors slamming shut. Voices. Ahmed grabbed the candle, motioning for silence. Greater than they found us. We hid behind the old furniture as footsteps approached the porch. The door burst open. 2 men entered, holding flashlights and guns. Anila gasped, and I covered her mouth. One of the men muttered, "Greater than Zahid, said no witnesses. End it quickly." My heart stopped. I could hear Ahmed's breath shaking beside me. The men moved slowly across the room. Then, one of them kicked over a chair, the noise echoing through the hall. Ahmed whispered, "Greater than Mom. When I signal, run." "No, Ahmed, greater than please. I can't lose you too." Before I could argue, he jumped out from behind the wall and hit one of the men with the metal rod. The other shouted, firing a shot that missed narrowly. Anila screamed. Chaos erupted. I grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back door. We ran into the rain, slipping on the muddy ground. Behind us, I heard more gunshots, shouts, then silence. When we finally reached the edge of the property, Ahmed came running after us, soaked but alive. "Greater than, let's go," he yelled. We kept running through the forest, through the rain, until our legs gave out. We stopped under a broken shed, breathing heavily. "Greater than, where's Rashid?" I asked. "Gone," Ahmed said bitterly. "He sold us out. Zahid paid him off." Anila collapsed onto the ground, sobbing. "It's my fault. All of it. If I had never opened that drive." I knelt beside her. "Greater than, no, Beta. The truth isn't your enemy. Evil is greater than, and running from truth only makes it stronger." Ahmed looked at us, eyes filled with guilt and rage. "Greater than, we can't keep hiding. This ends now. What are you going to do?" I asked. "Finish what Dad started." He pulled out the damaged USB drive and held it up. "There's a backup server in the cafe. Dad's old data line. If I can connect this there, I can send everything to the media before they find us again." Anila's eyes widened. "Greater than, but that's suicide, Ahmed. They'll be waiting for you." "Then, let them wait," he said quietly. "Greater than, I won't run anymore." As dawn began to break, we made our way back toward the city. Each step felt heavier, but there was no turning back now. When we reached the outskirts, the world looked different, quieter, colder, as if holding its breath. Ahmed parked near the cafe's back alley. The building looked abandoned, its walls scarred by rain and time. "Greater than, stay here," he said. "I'll go alone." But Anila grabbed his hand. "If you go, I go. I'm not leaving you again." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, there was love in his eyes again. "Greater than, then we go together," he said softly. Inside the cafe, the air was thick with dust. Ahmed moved fast, reconnecting the old router, while Anila guarded the door. I stood by the window outside, watching the street nervously. Then, as the upload started, a car turned the corner. The same black SUV. "Greater than, Ahmed." I shouted. "They're here." He looked at the screen. 80%. 85%. Greater than. Just a little more. Anila held the door shut as the men rammed against it. "Greater than, hurry," she screamed. The bar hit 100%. Upload complete. Ahmed yanked the cables, and the lights flickered off at that exact moment. The city looked different now. It wasn't just quieter. It was emptier, as if the truth had burned away all its noise. News vans crowded the streets. Reporters spoke in hurried tones, and everywhere I looked, Zahid. Malik's face was on every screen, once a man of power. now a symbol of disgrace. The scandal had broken wide open. Files, recordings, names all public now. People he had silenced for years were finally speaking up. But amidst that storm of justice, I was alone. It had been a week since that night. Ahmed and Anila were gone. No calls. No messages, no trace. Every day, I walked to the same small tea stall, hoping I'd hear their names whispered in the news, hoping for a sign that they'd survived. The shopkeeper would ask, "Greater than Amma, you still waiting for someone?" And I'd smile faintly. Greater than for the ones who brought the truth home. The government had taken over Zahid's assets. His loyal men scattered. Rashid was arrested, trying to cross the border. His confession later confirmed what we already knew: he had betrayed Ahmed for money. But when Zahid turned on him too, he had tried to run. Zahid himself had disappeared. Some said he fled abroad. Others whispered he was dead. But deep down, I knew men like him don't die easily. They hide, they wait. One evening, as the sun set behind the old factory skyline, I visited my husband's grave. It was quiet there. The world's chaos couldn't reach this place. I sat beside the stone and whispered, "Greater than, you were right, Faisal. Truth always finds its way." The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere far, a train horn echoed. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry. Not from pain, but from relief. But just as I wiped my tears, I noticed something small at the edge of the grave. A folded piece of paper. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside, written in Ahmed's handwriting, were 4 words: "Greater than, we're safe. Trust no one." My heart stopped. He was alive. They were alive. I looked around, but no one was there. Only the empty path and the orange sky fading into dusk. That night, I returned home with a strange calm in my chest. Hope had returned, fragile, but alive. I made tea for 2, as if Ahmed and Anila might walk in any moment. And as I sat there, the news played in the background. Breaking news: a secret server linked to Zahid Malik's organization has been discovered. The data indicates more names, possibly international connections. I turned up the volume. The report mentioned the location, a server in Karachi. But then, the reporter added something that made my blood run cold. Greater than, the anonymous source who provided this data used the codename Faisal Onzi. That was my husband's old security ID. No one knew that, except Ahmed. The realization hit me hard. Ahmed wasn't just running. He was still fighting. Even from the shadows, every new leak, every exposure, it was him, working silently, carefully, under a name the world had forgotten. And Anise. She was with him. The thought gave me strength. They weren't victims anymore. They were warriors, carrying forward the legacy of truth my husband had died for. Days turned into weeks. Justice rippled through the country. People began calling Ahmed a hero, though no one knew his face. And I went back to living quietly, selling small snacks outside my house, talking to neighbors, smiling like any old woman. But inside, I was waiting for the day my son would return, not as the broken man he once was, but as the one he was always meant to be. One evening, as I closed my stall, a young boy ran up to me. "Someone left this for you." He handed me a small envelope, sealed with tape, no name. Just a symbol, a small hand-drawn circle with a single line through it. It was the same mark Ahmed used on his notebooks as a child. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a photo. It was of Ahmed and Anila, standing near a mountain lake, both smiling, both alive, on the back. It said, "The storm is over, but the sky still remembers." Tears blurred my vision as I held the picture close to my chest. For the first time in months, I laughed through my tears. They had found peace, and maybe, just maybe, I could too. Months later, a letter arrived from an unknown address. Inside was another note, longer this time. It was from Ahmed. "Ami, you taught me that truth doesn't need to be loud to change the world. It just needs to survive. Greater than the world knows Zahid's name now. But there are others still hiding in shadows. Anila and I are working to expose them one by one. When it's over, I'll come home. Greater than until then, know that your son is alive, not just breathing, but living with purpose. Tell Baba I kept his promise." Ahmed, the paper was wrinkled. The ink smudged, but the message burned bright. My tears fell onto the page. And I whispered into the night, "Greater than I'm proud of you. My son." Years passed, the world moved on. But every year, on the same day, the anniversary of my husband's death, I would find fresh flowers on his grave. No name. No note. Just white lilies. Ahmed's favorite. And each time, I'd smile, knowing he had been there, even for a moment. Because some bonds can't be broken by distance, or time, or even fate. Sometimes, when I sit on my porch and watch the evening sky, I remember that storm, the fear, the loss, the courage it took to stand against giants. And I realize something simple, yet profound. We pretend to be weak, poor, forgotten, not because we are, but because the world underestimates the power of quiet people. The kind who endure, the kind who fight in silence, the kind who rise again. And so, I keep living a quiet life in a small home, serving tea, feeding stray cats, listening to children laugh on the street. But deep down, I know my story isn't over, because the truth, once awakened, never sleeps again. It just waits for the next storm. Sometimes, life doesn't give us the ending we imagine. It gives us silence instead, the kind that teaches us what truly matters. Years have passed since that night, the night truth walked through fire and came out alive. The city has changed. New faces, new stories. But every time I walk past the cafe where it all began, I feel echoes of what we lost and what we found. I still remember Ahmed's smile when he was a child, that same curiosity in his eyes, the same fire that refused to die. And Ani, she came into our lives like a storm, but left like peace. Two souls, scarred by lies, healed by love, and bonded by something stronger than blood, truth. Music deepens, voice softens. People often ask me, "Amma, how did you survive everything?" And I always smile. Because survival isn't about fighting the world. It's about not letting the world change who you are. I may have lost my husband. I may have lived in fear, but I never lost my faith. And that is why truth found its way home. Sometimes I sit outside at night, a cup of tea in my hands, watching the stars blink through the city's haze. And I wonder, where is my son now? Is he still fighting for justice in the shadows? Or has he finally found the peace he deserves? The world may never know, but a mother always does. Some nights, when the wind rustles through the window, I hear his voice, soft, distant, but clear enough to remind me he's still out there. "Ami, the fight's not over yet." And I smile because neither is mine. Music rises slowly. hopeful tone. The world will forget names, it will forget faces, but it never forgets stories, especially the ones written in truth, and mine is not a story of revenge, nor of pain. It's